Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and today I'm going to make your dreams come true, Abzan Counters, a supremely fun commander deck that is usually a bit more expensive than most would like, not anymore. Thanks to MTGO Traders and Magic Online's literal bin of penny cards, we're going to make a fun and good Abzan Counters commander deck for a single dollar. $1 for the entire deck on Magic Online. Each card is worth a single penny. If you want to see the deck list in full or purchase the whole thing for a literal dollar online right now and play it right now, you can do that by clicking the first link in the description. I do hope you enjoy this dollar deck tech, and if you do, remember to hit that like button, helps out a lot. Commanding our Abzan counter army is Dagatar the Adamant, 4 mana for a legendary creature human warrior with vigilance, and he enters the battlefield with 4+1/+1 counters on him. You can also pay one of anything and 2 hybrid black-green mana to move a +1/+1 counter from target creature onto a second target creature. Pretty simple ability, but it has a myriad of uses. You can move the counters at instant speed to save a creature from a damage-based removal spell, or from taking too much damage in combat, or to simply get more counters on more creatures. As you'll soon see, you want all your creatures to have counters all the time. Dagatar is a cheap way to make that happen, and every time he comes back to the battlefield after death, well, that's 4 more counters to work with. A great Abzan commander for this strategy, and you guessed it, a single penny. Since we're running Abzan counters, we should start with the creatures that produce +1/+1 counters naturally, able to pump themselves. Thanks to Outlast from Tarkir, we have a plethora to choose from at the penny price point. Abzan Battle Priest, Abzan Falconer, Einok Bondkin, and Longshot Squad are all solid includes. Remember, each creature with a +1/+1 counter on it gets all these buffs. Lifelink, Flying, First Strike, Reach. There are so many tribal +1/+1 cards thanks to Outlast. We're also running Merek Nightblade to grant Death Touch to our entire team, and Tuskguard Captain to grant Trample. As you can see, it's a mechanic smorgasbord. Finally, Herald of Anafenza. It doesn't grant a mechanic, but it is a pretty strong factory for 1/1 warriors, and when you activate the ability, it just keeps getting bigger. There's no downside for us. In addition to these mechanically enhanced creatures, we're also running a suite of +1/+1 counter fiends that thrive off their counters. These are the creatures you want to add counters to. Etched Oracle with enough counters is Ancestral Recall for whenever you want. Gyre Sage becomes a mana rock that is also huge beyond reason. Mindless Automaton only enters the battlefield with 2 counters, but move some onto him or generate more on him and boom, you can draw cards all day. For the measly cost of 2 +1/+1 counters, as you'll soon see, this is well worth the inclusion. Newscraft Mob is basically the dream. I don't need a zombie deck to play this card. It is expensive, but it comes with 5 +1/+1 counters itself, and with each counter you add to it, that's another 2/2 you're eventually going to get. This card gets stupid real fast. You'd be surprised the amount of times I just had like 15 zombies on the battlefield. It's hilarious. Not even done, we're also running Obnixilis Unshackled. I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory, but he isn't here simply because he adds counters to himself when something dies. He's here because along with that ability, his oppressive anti-search trigger is outrageous, and being a single penny is absurd. One of the stronger creatures we're running despite his limited counter synergy. Pennevis is one of my favorite counter creatures of all time. The more counters this construct gets, the more 1/1 Pentavite tokens are going to be running around. It's like a robot insect machine. Expensive? Sure. But when you're moving counters all over the place and buffing your entire team, having a mass of 1/1s is never a bad thing. Protean Hydra is nigh invincible in this deck. Besides hard removal, the Hydra will never die. There's no way combat can take this down, especially when you can move counters onto it, and it doubles them at the beginning of the next end step. Totally outrageous. Funny as heck card, very good on the ground. And finally, Triskelion, an oldie but a goodie. Simply put, the more counters on this, the more removal you have for everything at the table. Without an additional cost to removing counters to ping something, Triskelion is a true terror in any counter-based deck. So we've already touched on the fact that most of our creatures do better with more counters. How are we going to add more counters? Oh, I've got answers for you. Cytoplast Rootkin can graft onto other creatures when they enter the battlefield, and it gives counters to everything with counters on it when the Rootkin enters the battlefield. And you can move counters from other creatures to the Rootkin, so it can then graft more onto new creatures. This thing's basically a counter planeswalker. Gladeheart Cavalry is much easier to understand. You're blanketing 6 creatures with counters, easy enabler there, and you get 2 life whenever one of your buff dudes dies. Orzhov Advocist, at the beginning of your upkeep, gives any creature you want 2 +1/+1 counters. You don't care that your opponents also get that, because let's be real, the counters go a lot further on your creatures. Now, don't let the mana cost scare you. Primeval Protector is easy to cast most of the time, is a giant avatar, and blankets your whole team with counters. Renegade Krasis gives more counters to everything with counters whenever it evolves, which won't be that difficult in this type of deck. And then when Jugan dies, he throws his power and toughness wherever he wants. It's honestly a beautiful sight to see. Thought we were done with creatures? Nope. We were able to include a pretty nice group of what I like to call +1/+1 counter tribal synergy creatures. Armorcraft Judge is going to draw 1 billion cards when it enters the battlefield. Corpsejack Menace is the closest we're going to get to doubling season, and it's a true all-star in this deck. Thank goodness it's only a single penny. We're really lucking out there. Doubles up our counters, making all of our threats even more massive. Fungal Behemoth is a cool card. Its strength is based on the number of total counters on your creatures, not the creatures themselves, which is sweet. This is going to drop as a 20/20 sometime, so be ready for that. And that suspend trigger, free +1/+1 counters. Fungal Behemoth is the unsung hero here. What a dumb card. Anyways, Highest Sentinels of Arishin gets gigantic from other creatures being gigantic, and it's a repeatable source of +1/+1 counter generation, incredibly important. And then we have Ivory Tusk Fortress, which is basically Prophet of Kruphix for creatures in this deck, which would be enough for me, but it's also a massive 5/7 for 5 mana, so it pulls its weight, literally. Rounding out our creature package, we have a few spicy additions. Verol's the Scar-Striped is a scavenge machine. Exiling our fallen brethren generate more counters for the living. How touching. Acidic Slime is a staple include, gotta have that removal and death touch, none to scoff at. Smothering Abomination is an interesting one. We don't have a huge sacrifice package, but we have a giant creature generation package. Between the Herald, Newscraft, Pentavis, and more, there are enough things to throw at this Abomination, and in this color combination, more cards are always better. Plus, throwing +1/+1 counters on a flyer is a thing. And finally, to protect everything we have going on, Archetype of Endurance, the wide-reaching hexproof monster that also makes our opponent's creatures more vulnerable. We're putting all our eggs in the counters basket. We can't just let our creatures get removed left and right. Gotta run the God Boar. So clearly we have a plan. Mass creatures, mass +1/+1 counters, destroy our enemies with sick amounts of value. Good thing this color combination has been doing that for years. We're running 5 enchantments, all of them baller. Abzan Ascendancy and Death's Presence give us a lot of value when our creatures die, and the Ascendancy even brings a wave of +1/+1 counters with it. Also, those 1/1s will taste delicious to our Abomination. We're also running Durable Handicraft because once this is on the field, paying 1 mana for another +1/+1 counter on our creatures, especially the ones that use those counters as currency, is nothing. Paying for it is nothing to us. Plus, if things get real bad, you can drop counters from the sky by sacrificing it. Gleam of Authority is literally everything I've ever wanted in my entire life. Cheap, makes the creature beyond huge, and has Bolster to pump tiny tokens that don't have counters yet. Literal perfection. And the last enchantment, Retribution of the Ancients, basically broken in this deck. It's great in the non-budget version of the deck. It's great here. It's gonna shed a lot of blood. There will be a point where removing counters won't mean much to you, and you wreck your opponent's best creatures. It's so good. If you thought our +1/+1 counter support ended with that, you'd be dead wrong, friendo. Abzan Charm is a removal spell or a draw spell, or it gives counters, the whole package. Lifecrafter's Gift spreads the counters around and gives a creature 2 counters that didn't have any before. That's nice. Solidarity of Heroes is totally ridiculous. 2 mana for each creature to double the amount of counters on them. Beyond unreal. Play this card, it's really powerful. Strength of the Tajuru is relatively affordable on the low end and a great mana sink on the high end, making 2 creatures real big. Hunting Triad is one of my favorite cards. It can create elves for you to pump up, or it can reinforce, giving even more counters to the cause. Few players know about this card. It's pretty sweet. Increasing Savagery will get cast for both 5 and 10 counters. This is one of those times you want to remember the cards that care about how many counters are on things. Super brutal. Incremental Growth is 5 mana for 6 counters spread across 3 creatures. Imagine turning 3 1/1 tokens into a 2/2, 3/3, and 4/4, and now they all share in the +1/+1 counter synergy. I love this deck. We also have some artifact support and animation module to create more 1/1s for our counters, and to create more counters for our creatures that already have counters on them. Bow of Nylea adds counters as well as granting Death Touch to our attacking team, wrecking flyers, gaining life, or tucking our graveyard. Kind of a jack of all trades here. And Contagion Clasp is a bit of removal, but also proliferates, which is perfect for, you guessed it, all of our counters. Beyond the +1/+1 counter synergy, being in Abzan colors grants us many advantages. It lets us move into Resurrection pretty easily. Necromantic Summons is a solid recursion spell, but even better with Spell Mastery, giving us some counters to work with. Profane Command, another versatile spell that fills a ton of roles, and Vigor Mortis, one of the coolest cards in the deck. A recursion spell that grants a +1/+1 counter as long as green was spent to cast it. What a neat card. The deck runs Hero's Downfall, Putrefy, Utter End, and Ruinous Path for ruthless removal. Ruinous Path is particularly nice because the land gets counters. The fact that we can run all these cards for a penny each, hysterical to me by the way. Anyways, we also have Naturalize for artifact and enchantment removal, Harmonize and Read the Bones for card draw because we're not in blue and we need it, and Diabolic Tutor. Since our deck is so varied, the tutor can help get us anything we need at a moment's notice. Whatever piece of synergistic tech will save us, we can get it. And finally, we need Ramp, which is why I'm happy to announce that Rampant Growth, Golgari Signet, Orzhov Signet, and Selesnya Signet are all a single penny. What a time to be alive. As far as the land base is concerned, we got some cool stuff going on. Llanowar Reborn is my favorite land since it comes with Graft. How awesome is that? Grim Backwoods lets you sacrifice tokens for cards. Mortuary Mire brings something you want back. And Blighted Fen is simply a good penny removal land. For fixing, we're running Temple of Silence. Yeah, that's a penny. Orzhov Basilica, Sandstep Citadel, Great Pelt Refuge, a bunch of Vivid lands, and Evolving Wilds. Round that out with 12 forests, 5 plains, and 8 swamps, and you have the whole deck, which is why it actually costs less than $1. I'm including the basic lands in the cost. If you don't buy those, it's even cheaper. I don't know about you, but this is pretty friggin' sweet. Abzan counters Commander deck, and I'm not joking, it's literally $1 on Magic Online. Don't want to invest a lot of money into an online client? Don't. Spend $1. Get an entire Commander deck and play tonight, right now, whenever you want, in your pajamas. You gotta admit, this is pretty cool for $1, right? And also remember, if you want to see the list in its entirety or buy the thing for an actual dollar bill, be sure to click the first link in the description. I do hope you enjoyed this dollar deck tech, and if you did, let me know, I'll make more. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.